Oh, it's chilly. Hey everybody, look, bike gloves, leathers, that's right, I'm on a bike today, not currently, but I will be. I haven't actually been down to this part of the beach for a few weeks now, and I want to come down and see how it changed since last time. From the last time there was like a 10-foot bank here and I jumped down it. Well, that's kind of been filled in now, and yeah, it's kind of evening itself out, as I said it would. But anyway, so yeah, I'm on a bike today, and I am not going to Tesco's. I'm not. I actually don't have a reason to be out today. I'm just out on the bike because I can. Obviously, if you've been watching my channel, I've spent the past couple of weeks renovating, painting, moving stuff around. And that's led to a couple of things I'd like to talk about. And I was like, I was going to talk about these at home, but hey, why not? Why don't we get out on the bike and do it now? And I'm on Divvy because I realised I made the last few videos on Derek, and someone even asked me if I'd sold this bike because of that. And I'm like, no, it's only been 3 weeks since I made a video on it, but whatever. I thought, you know, for a change as it is, I'll be on Divvy. Right, the two things I want to talk about came out of, you know, doing this, building a studio up, moving stuff around, sorting through old stuff, throwing things away. The first thing is that if you remember going back, a few years now, I put a disc out in my back and I couldn't walk properly for like 7 months. The NHS basically did nothing at all, and eventually it kind of self-stabilised and it's been okay. And obviously when you rupture a disc in your back, it never gets better as such, but mine did seem to be getting a lot better than it used to be, and I thought that was that it had improved. When I went to do the work in the office and painting and stuff, it became very obvious to me that it wasn't my back that's improved at all. You know, obviously it recovered a bit, but it's not more stable than it used to be. It's just I protect it by changing the way that I stand, by not allowing myself to stoop over or keep bending down to pick things up, or bend over 3 hours working on a bike. I'll now sit on a lower chair or something like that. I didn't realise how much I'd protected my own back. And also that when it did get bad, while I was doing all that work, I just kind of toned it down a little bit and did one thing at a time and was sensible about it. And within 4 days of stopping, it's kind of got back to normal again. So if you do have a bad back, if you haven't gone through the whole process of mentally thinking about how you stand when you work, about when your back gets bad and things like that, if you haven't gone through that mental process to help protect it the best you can for yourself, I strongly suggest you do it. Because as I had a suspicion that I'd learned to stand better and correct my posture and all that sort of stuff to help improve it, but I didn't realise how much of a difference it actually made. A realisation of how bad my back can get still, and how easily that can be done if I break one of those little rules. What ruined my back this time? Bending over to paint. You know, you got to bend down to roller the roller and stand up and do that, and it was that up and down that was destroying it. Well, obviously I got a wooden stick out and made the roller as long as I possibly could, but there's only so much you can do there, especially when it comes to like edging and cutting in and blah blah. The second thing is to do with clutter, to do with how many things you keep and what that does to your life. Now, this isn't necessarily me I'm talking about here, because I've always had this sort of running routine that if it's something that I use regularly, well, it's going to be out to be used regularly. If it's something that I don't use very regularly, it will be in a storage drawer, and if it's something I haven't used in years, it tends to get pushed down to like the last layer of storage. And every now and then I'll go through that, and if I haven't used that thing in a couple of years, I haven't needed it, if it's got value, I'll sell it or I'll give it to someone, and if not, it goes in the bin. Now, I do understand the sentimental stuff, because sometimes I'll keep little things that remind me of something important to me. Now, I'm not talking about something that's got great value, it's obviously worth keeping. I'm talking about a stone or something that reminds me of a time. And in more recent years, I'm realising I don't need those things to remember them. If it was that important, you probably remember it. And if you're not going to remember it because you don't keep this rock or whatever it is, it probably wasn't that important. And I really, really strongly advise for people to keep moving forward in life. Don't hold on to the past too much. You know, as someone who's struggled with anxiety and depression and stuff like that, I've been through some very dark times, and I've had things which weren't connected to that but reminded me of that time. And I'm really glad over time that I got rid of some of those things. Now, recently with the clear out, I became completely ruthless. utterly ruthless. I cannot believe how few things I actually own now. 80% of the items that I own, at least, are tools to do a job, whether that be photography stuff or physical mechanical tools. That's what I own. I have some clothes, but not a huge amount. And I do have a few other things that are absolutely not necessary to keep, but they're very small and they're contained down to one box or so. And the other things that I've kept, like my old motorcycle helmets, for instance, they're always up on display. They're in the new office on display. If it came down to it, if I got my new place and I needed to get rid of stuff like that, because it's going to be a lot smaller than what we have space now, I'll just bin it, or I'll give it away, or I don't know, well, not give it away because I don't want to give old helmets away that people could possibly try and use, but I don't know, maybe it's a memento to someone or something like that. The point is, I will ruthlessly throw everything away that I don't need. And this is what I'm talking about. If you find you don't have much space, if you find you're holding on to a lot of stuff, the way to solve this problem in my mind is to think about the things that you use regularly and then start at the other end. If you know you've got a drawer you've not been through in 5 years, then you could probably throw the entire contents of that drawer away. Now, of course, there are times where, you know, you keep an old cable or stuff like that. Particularly, that's one of the problems I had, was I had loads of old cables and stuff that I kept from previous computer setups and cameras and stuff like that. And it became a giant duffel bag. And just recently I was like, look, I've got to go through this and just decide what I am and am not going to keep. And I did that about a year ago, but I basically just neatened it up and kept everything. I went through it like, wait, am I actually going to connect anything to a PC using a serial cable, like, you know, like a monitor lead cable? Again, no. Why have I got this? Get rid of it. And equally, I don't like the idea of just throwing stuff away. So you've got to make sure that there is going to be no use for it in the future. And if you can get that thing recycled, get it recycled. But it's also about not buying things unless you really need them. And that's obviously good for budgeting, but it's also good for your future. Anything you buy, anything you own, has, the way I look at it, has a cubic footage. And your place of living has a cubic footage. If you keep a load of surplus stuff, you are using up a load of your allotted cubic footage for nothing. And then when it comes to you moving house, you start digging out cupboards and stuff and digging out and finding you've got so much more stuff than you ever thought. And it's stuff that's sat in cupboards for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. But for some reason you can't just go, well, if I haven't touched it in 10 years, it probably needs to go in the bin. That's the line you have to try and negotiate. As I say, I'm not a minimalist. I'm getting closer to it as a person, but I'm not a minimalist. I'm a functionalist. I like items that have function and relevant function to me now. I know factually at least one person watching this video will have a load of extra stuff they can definitely get rid of, and it's you know it's time to have a sort out and be a little bit ruthless about what you actually are and aren't going to use again. As I say, do what I do, use that rule, which is that if it goes into the storage, we'll call it, say, the 5-year storage, and it hasn't been touched or used in 5 years, bin it. You don't need it unless it's got value, in which case sell it or give it to someone who will use it and will get value from it. It's like books. I personally hate books. You chop trees down to make a book for it then to sit in a bookcase. Yes, if it's a library then it gets shared, but how many people have just got reams of books stored away in their house? They're going to watch them once. Watch them? Sorry, I was thinking of DVDs. It's the same thing there though. They're going to read them once, maybe twice over the years, and then they're just going to sit there. Yeah, okay, some people are like, well, I lend my books out to other people. Sure, but most of the time they just sit on a shelf and do nothing. You know, a common trait for a lot of hoarders is not that they just want to own a lot of things, it's they perceive it to have a lot more value than it really does. And then when you say, well, right then, go and sell it, they never can. And then they won't make the connection, which is the reason I have not been able to sell this. Thank you. They're not making the realization the reason it didn't sell is because it's not worth it and no one wants it. And as such, it has no value. You know, something is only worth as much as someone is willing to pay for it. That's entirely true. Yeah, it's associating values onto things they don't have because you have something in your head that makes you want to keep hold of things. Some people see possessions as wealth because it's a backup that, oh, well, if it all goes wrong, I can sell all this stuff. But then they realise when they do try and sell it, it's worth nothing. And what ends up happening then is they get into a situation where they maybe have, I don't know, a year to throw everything away or find storage for it. And by that point, you just don't have a choice, and most of it goes in the bin. And then maybe some things you had that were worth something are going to end up getting put in the bin with everything else, because you just won't be able to keep everything. Now, I honestly think for some people, their emotional baggage and their physical... Quick stop. I truly believe that some of your emotional baggage you may find is connected to your physical baggage, as it were, the things you're holding on to. And with throwing away some of those old things that maybe remind you of the worst times, you're holding on to that for some reason, and it is time to throw it away and move on. Move on to the new time. Stop looking backwards, look forwards. I know this goes a lot deeper than just, have you got a box full of old games and stuff? But seriously, I can see it in people. I noticed it in ways in myself with little things, and I've considered myself to be very organised with this sort of stuff. Emotional baggage, physical baggage, the question is this: do you really need to be holding on to it this long? And if you don't, run it through the system. If you've not touched it in 5 years, if it's been no use to you in 5 years, let it go. I hope in some way you found this video useful or interesting, and if you did, thank you for watching. Smack the like button. Help support this channel if you can through Patreon, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye. And seriously, best of luck to you. Don't throw everything away that, all of a sudden, but if you find that you can throw some stuff away, do it. It's really good for your soul.